Number 8, LSU on the road at number 14, Texas A&M. The Aggies are 2.5-point favorites. This is at 6:30 p.m. on ABC, the primetime game of the week in the Southeastern Conference. And guys, I mentioned off the top that the home team has won the last 6 games in this series. So if the Aggies are hold serve, they're favored to win this one. As we dove into the notes and talked about the stats and X factors, it became very clear that these two teams are separated by the thinnest of margins. LSU may be ranked 8th, A&M may be ranked 14th, but both of these teams do certain things very well. Sometimes they struggle with certain aspects of it. I think the quarterback play is certainly something that's going to draw a lot of eyes in this game, but both of these teams really separated by a razor's edge, which certainly makes for an entertaining football game.
Yeah, these teams are almost identical when you really think about it. I mean, they both have week one losses that, are kind of embarrassing, followed up by just kind of rattling off a bunch of wins, sometimes convincingly, sometimes not so convincingly, where, both teams felt like they should have probably played better. Both teams have a great pass rush. Both teams get after the passer. Both teams have some issues in the secondary. A&M gives up some of the big plays. LSU sometimes plays a little soft in zone. A&M probably has the edge in the run game. I think the Moss Daniels tandem is a little bit better. But I think LSU probably has the nod on the quarterback play. If for nothing else, then I think Nussmeier's been more consistent to this point in the season. Now, Wigman, he does have the ability to go off, and part of this does have to do with, and I'm going to bring up this stat now, from PFF, LSU has a 40% pressure rate, but that might actually play into some of Connor's strengths. He has an 81 PFF grade under pressure, which is 4th in the country, but a 56.3 grade with a clean pocket, which is 3rd worst. So that maybe rushing the passer and having that as one of your strengths on defense isn't quite going to be the recipe for LSU. It's going to come down to, I think, Connor Wigman being able to compete against the pressure, be able to stand in there, find those spots in the zone, be able to complete some passes, and to move the football, keep them honest, right? So you can kind of, keep the run game going if you're A&M. That's really where the strength of the offense is, bread and butter. Flip side, if Nussmeier has one of those games, then it may not matter what A&M does on the offensive side. They may not be able to keep up.
Yeah, I think both of these quarterbacks really thrive when they have a very clear hot route or a very clear throw or scheme. It's schemed to one place, right? And that's not saying anything radical for most college quarterbacks, but it was really on display for Nuss last week against Arkansas. He was 1 of 10 for just 10 yards on throws, 10 plus yards down the field in the first half. Didn't see a stat for how that played out in the second half, but I don't remember a lot of big plays down the field for him. And that's really kind of been his bread and butter throughout the season. I really think that Connor Wegman, the key to this one is him just taking care of the football and not turning the ball over and setting up the run with him passing. If he can get those LSU defenders out of the box, then we might see a game like South Carolina, like Ole Miss, where LSU gave up quite a few yards on the ground. They've been prone to do that against some talented running back rooms and running games. So I'll ask you guys, what unit do you trust the most on the field? Is it A&M's defense at home? I kind of lean that way in context here, but I wouldn't fault anybody for picking LSU's offense either.
I think it is Texas A&M's defense because we came into this year thinking that LSU's offense was going to be a known quantity. But when you dive into some of the deeper analytics, like you talked about, Nussmeier's got happy feet, man, and he makes a lot of throws off his back foot. He's not the most accurate passer. Now, it
Wegman
helps.
does too, to be fair. Wegman loves to do it too.
He absolutely does. And so I think for me, the offense almost kind of washes out. And I do trust A&M's defense more than LSU's. Tigers have made big strides over the last couple of weeks without Harold Perkins Jr., which has been really surprising. But I think you're seeing the Blake Baker effect take hold a little bit quicker than maybe we were anticipating it would in Baton Rouge, because suddenly LSU secondary, not the liability that we once thought it was. They're getting pressure on the quarterback, and they don't have that traditional X factor like a Harold Perkins who's driving the engine. It's really just been solid play across the board for LSU. But I do find myself coming back to, I think, Texas A&M's defensive front. Hopefully they can get pressure on Nussmeier. The secondary, in in large quantities has held up. Now, Mississippi State threw a lot of balls underneath at them last week. I wonder if LSU attacks them the same way. But I think this probably leans more towards a defensive struggle than an all-out shootout.
Well, and what's interesting about that, Trey, what you're asking is what unit do we trust the most? We really do have strength on strength with, LSU's offense versus the A&M defense, but you also have a weird symmetry on the other side of the ball. When A&M's offense and LSU's defense are out there, these are two units that have progressed a lot this year. And if you look at where they were weeks 1, week 2, week 3 versus where they are now, both units have made big strides. Now, obviously, with Connor Wegman being out for as long as he was, the strides were only so good on the A&M side. So you might see that take another leap this week, even from what you've seen the last couple of weeks, just more time in the system, more time actually playing on the field. But it's really going to be interesting to see what both of those sides can bring. Does LSU have the ability to go and stuff the run and play good in pass defense and take that next step? Or, flip side, does the A&M offense continue to run the ball well, but then find more of that intermediate passing and break some big plays over the top in the pass game? One of those things has to break, because on the other side of the ball, it's strength versus strength. Great offense, great defense. Both are going to get their plays. It's more about, for me, what happens when it's the A&M offense on the field and if they can move the ball consistently.
Yeah, and why I lean A&M's defense, I think, to answer my own question, they much has been made about them giving up big plays, and that's certainly a problem. If they give up a lot of big plays in this one, could be a big problem for them against LSU, because like you said, Garrett, I don't know that the offense is really ready to keep up in a shootout, but they make up for it with the tackles for loss. Overall, they're only giving up like 4.3, I think, yards per play this year. That's plenty fine. That is more than okay. They're giving up big plays, but they're making up for it with tackles for loss. LSU's running game, it's flashed this year, but I think they really got to establish that. They can get some quick hitters for sure. They can move the ball, but if they're settling for field goals like they were against Arkansas and A&M is not turning the ball over, that could be a recipe for a loss.
Well, and you're seeing a struggle, I think, across the country for these passing offenses to convert in the red zone and to turn 3 points into 7 points consistently, because it's just gotten a little bit harder to pass the ball in the red zone, whether you're watching college football or the pros. When you shrink the field, suddenly the secondary looks a whole lot more competent. And so, Trey, you mentioned the running game. Le'Veon Moss has been the bell cow for Texas A&M, but they've gotten Amari Daniels going. E.J. Smith comes in as the change of pace back. For LSU, Caden Durham, a true freshman, has really emerged as the bell cow for the Tigers. Now, I got to watch him for a number of years at Duncanville. I knew he was going to be special. Didn't know he was going to be this special this soon. But how can Texas A&M make sure that a true freshman, a very talented one, doesn't come in and beat them in their home turf?
To me, it's doing what they've been doing. They're very good schematically at stopping the run. Where they get in trouble is breaking tackles and getting juked and getting one-on-one in space. That's where we've seen the big plays on the ground against A&M, when it's usually one defender one-on-one in space. That's going to be difficult for any college defender against a talented running back or a talented skill position player. So just play sound defensive football. I don't mean to oversimplify things here, but schematically, A&M is typically in a very good place to stop the run. Don't get isolated, fill your gaps, and just do your job on defense. And I think you do a pretty good job of slowing down, not stopping completely, but slowing down LSU's run game.
If Texas A&M gets the first half performance from Connor Wegman that they saw last week against Mississippi State, if they get the Connor Wegman that showed up to the Missouri game, I do think Texas A&M wins. That being said, though, I will unashamedly emotionally hedge here. I'm going to take LSU plus the 2.5. Preseason, a lot of people were picking LSU to break this trend, to come into College Station and find a way to beat the Aggies. I will admit, I fully am on board with A&M winning this game, but boy, there is something about this LSU team that continues to defy the odds, that continues to, when everyone left them for dead, much like the Aggies after that early loss, they have quietly found ways to accumulate wins. That win over Ole Miss at home was a big deal. Now, can they follow that up? Can they follow the win up at Arkansas with what I believe is their toughest game to date in College Station? I'll take them plus the 2.5, but we'll say Texas A&M wins, LSU covers.
I'm going to take the Aggies by 2.5 here. I do think A&M covers this one. It's going to be close. I don't think they cover by a whole lot, but I do think that, ultimately in a game that's so close and so evenly matched, I'm going to go with the home team and the home field advantage. I'm going to go with the, the whole, blackout vibes and, the energy that's going to be in the crowd. I understand there's some call outs and trash talk and all that stuff. I'm not interested in that, but I am interested in the blackout and the stuff that's going to be going on around this game, the crowd energy, as well as, and this is going to be kind of my big thing right here. If you can run and keep the chains moving in this close game, I think that's what you want to do and kind of where you want to be. I trust A&M to do that right now. If there's a 3rd and 2, if there's a 3rd and 3, who do I think is going to get more of those over the course of this game? I think it's going to be A&M. It may not be by a lot, but I do think they end up getting this and find ways to convert a little bit more than LSU does. And so I am going to take A&M to cover this, maybe extend 1 or 2 more drives, score a couple more points than them, and get out of this with a win.
The stats would back you up on that, Garrett, both on offense and defense for A&M on 3rd down conversions. They were great at that, and that's why they won against Mississippi State last week and weren't really fully in trouble. I'm going to take A&M to cover as well. Going back to the offseason, A&M had 4 big home games, and this was always the one I kind of circled to say, like, this is going to be the one that's most likely for A&M to win. I know LSU fans won't like it. They'll see my pennant in the background. I don't care. A&M minus 2.5. It's time to win big, and it's time to get the big win at home and prove that you belong on the national stage. It feels different this year, and I think they proved that it's different this Saturday.
One more point real quick on the conversions. I trust Connor to go pick up those extra yards if he has to scramble. Connor Wigman currently has 112 yards on the season rushing. If you look at that in the same light for Nussmeier, having played more games, he has 16. And so I'm not really going to trust Nussmeier to pick up those extra yards on the ground if it's a rollout situation, climb the pocket and scramble for it. Nussmeier just hadn't shown that he can do that. Connor's not an elite runner like Marcel Reed, his backup. However, he has shown that he can go get that first down, dive forward, and maybe hopefully avoid some injuries going forward. But he can go pick up that first down. So that's just kind of one more notch in that. I think they win the 3rd down thing.
Nussmeier is the definition of a pocket passer. He wants to stay in there. He wants to throw off whatever platform he's going to establish. We'll wait and see. He does it off of a variety of angles, but he's a pocket passer, certainly doesn't leave very often. His offensive line's also done a good job. Now, PFF tweeted out that the LSU offensive line had not given up a sack this year. That's just blatantly wrong. They gave up 2 to South Carolina, and for everyone in the comments, it was like, well, it could have been a tight end or a running back in pass pro. No, it was against the left tackle. They got beat.
I remember distinctly watching that game thinking, oh, this is LSU's offensive line, because it was still very early on in the year.
Exactly. So anyway, Nuss has been pretty well protected throughout the season, but they're not perfect.
Gracious him. How about that?